Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritually Speaking. Today, my beautiful guest is Donna. Donna, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so happy to have you here.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, I know we had a really great pre-chat the other day, and you have your hands in a few little pies there. So tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, my name's Donna Marston. I am a certified recovery support worker, also known as the family recovery um, facilitator, and I'm a harm reduction trainer. And I work with parents, in particular, a lot of moms, more or less, but parents and other family members who love somebody in active addiction or early recovery.
Yeah, that's a big and emotional and heavy area to be working in. And a lot of people may wonder how that applies to spirituality because I do have a spiritual podcast. So, how do you feel everything integrates together between the addiction and spirituality and the heaviness and the emotions of all of those things?
Well, to give you a little bit more of the story, I have a son who's a person in long-term recovery, and I dealt with his addiction for 10 years and from 15 to 25. And year eight, I hit my enough. And I had what do you call it? I can't think. My brain's just stopped. An emotional scale.
Mhm.
And when I looked at it, I was number 22. I was at the bottom of the scale. I was depressed. I was full of grief, and there was just all this stuff. And I thought, how could this have happened? I mean, that's just not who I am. And I'm not a person who I mean, we all have a little dysfunction, but I didn't grow up in dysfunction. It wasn't in my household. Um, and I just realized that I'm a mess. And so from that, I decided to start a journey and of moving forward and getting unstuck and getting out of this rescue mode and just living in fear. I started to go to some of the support group meetings, and this is back in the 19, no, this was in 2006. And it just wasn't working for me because I didn't know how to work it because my son wasn't like their children. So like just give me the answer so I can go do what I need to do. And just I was just emotionally ill and I had Reiki done. And it was the first time in years that I felt a bounce in my step. I had some love in my heart. My body felt lighter. I smiled that day and I wanted more. And so I went on this search of finding somebody to train me. And I had signed up for all these trainings and in the 11th hour I would cancel because they just never felt right.
Right.
And I was going to my chiropractor, and this little teeny woman comes bouncing out of her room. And it's just funny how things happen sometimes. And I just looked at her, and, we just connected eye to eye. And I said, "Are you a Reiki master?" And I've never seen or met this woman in my life. And she said, "I am." And I said, "Will you teach me?" And so she did.
Wow.
We did some sessions. She did a lot of healing, and so that started my journey. And from there, I met this other woman who did taught me how to meditate. And so I started to meditate, and then I just went on the spiritual journey of healing from the inside out and using those techniques, whether it was Reiki or meditation brainwave therapy back then. I used to have a portable CD player and
Oh,
I'd put the
wow.
headphones on at night because I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And so I would put those on and I'd have outer body experiences.
Wow. Tell us
Yeah,
about that. That's pretty incredible.
it was pretty incredible. Yeah, it was just amazing stuff. And people don't believe you often when you tell them, but I at that time I connected with angels. And I've always loved angels, but this was a connection where I was with them. And I'll tell you a story. So one, I had gone to this Al-Anon meeting, and it was in this big church. And all around the top of the room, this room was huge, was this balcony. And this woman was talking, and I'm usually pretty quiet, and I kind of sit in the back, right, and watch, right. I'm not one
Right.
to be overly participate. And so I noticed these people, spirits behind this woman. And I stopped the meeting. I said, "Excuse me, I don't know what's going on, but I have to tell you, I think your grandparents are standing behind you, and they're in their Sunday clothes." And, so that's when I started to see spirit. And
Wow.
they all looked at me like I was crazy. And then another part of that day, as I was sitting there, I just remember looking up and seeing angels leaning over the railing and just clapping.
Oh, that's so incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So and I've just been on journeys with them and just pretty amazing stuff. But yeah.
I would say that is very amazing and incredible. It sounds incredible. So what places have you gone with the angels? That's just,
Just like in the universe, I remember one time like I was riding on their back, like a piggyback, with their wings and whatnot, and just I was there for the ride and just taking me outside of myself.
yeah,
And I think that's what it was all about. They were teaching me how to get outside of myself because back when my son was using, my head was my hell because I
yeah,
created stories that I didn't know to be true. Some of them was true, but and I made myself crazy. So I'd lie in bed awake at night, and it being intuitive, sometimes I'd get this message, get up and get dressed because the police are going to call. You have to go quick, get going, get going, get going. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes would just sit there twiddling my thumbs. And that's the insanity.
yeah,
Started to feel like I was crazy. And so I had to find a way to release my pain, my grief, because when we have a loved one in active addiction, we're grieving. We're grieving the loss of our hopes and dreams of what they could do, who they could become, all of that stuff, especially as a parent.
right.
I didn't know how to do all that. I didn't know what to do with any of it. And so it was baby steps of my out of body experiences coming back and doing healing. And I would do some ceremonial stuff with writing and burning, and pretty typical stuff like that.
Yeah, the letting go stuff with the fire. That is an amazing practice. I don't
Mhm.
know how many people out there have tried it or done it. I'm not a big fan of the word try, and I do my best not to use it, but I don't know how many people have done that practice, but it is an absolutely incredible and very powerful letting go practice. It truly is.
Yeah, I do that with the people I work with, and I'll create a burn box. I'll take like a little tissue box like this, and I'll
Mhm.
decorate it. And there's a one of the sayings, something about this is it talks about how I'm burning what no longer serves me.
Oh,
So
no.
I would whatever was going on, stuff I was feeling about my son, the anger, I would take that, I would write it on a piece of paper, or I would write, a pain or whatever it was going on, and I would drop it in my box, because I took all the tissue out. And so I would keep that box. And every once in a while, I would just go sit at my fire pit and just burn it all. So just because it was too painful. I had to stop carrying it around. And that was the only way I could figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So it,
And
it did it did well for me.
yeah, and I love that. It did well for you. I actually made a little video this morning for my Mindful Monday musings that talks about it looks different for all of us, and we must find a way, each of us, our own way of doing it. And when people like you share your story about how you do it, then that gives us the opportunity to do it that way ourselves and see how it works for us. And if
Hmm.
we do like it, then we can adopt it as ours. And if it doesn't resonate exactly, we can tweak it a little bit, or we can take that idea and make something else out of it. So I love that you shared that and you said it worked for you.
The other
Yeah.
thing I did too, and I'm not, I believe in a power greater than me. It's a
Yeah.
universal energy. I choose to call that energy God because that's just a name that resonates with me.
Right.
It's he, she, whatever. It just, so I would again take one of these tissue boxes and I would decorate it with different sayings on it that are powerful that would for my heart. And so um, like people that hurt me or things that hurt me, whatever it was, that caused a break into my heart or, into my shell. I
Mhm.
would put their name or the situation in my God box. And I would do that. And it could be I was just handing somebody over, going, just please take them out of my life. I can't do this. Handing my son over. Or I asked for something that I thought I wanted or needed in my life.
Mhm.
And every New Year's Day, January 1st, every year, I empty my God box out and I look at what was hurting me, what I wanted changes with, and I would go through and 9 times out of 10, I could get rid of it. Just I could burn it, put it in the trash. It was no longer needed. And if
Wow.
and if it was a want, a wish, and I still wanted that in my life, then I would put it back in the box till the following year.
Wow. And so, how many things do you feel like the percentage wise of things that you wished for or prayed for actually came true for you during that year?
Probably like 99%.
That's amazing. So, it's like your little manifestation box. Take this away and then it goes away, and bring this in and it comes in. That's pretty incredible. I
And then I
really like
started,
that idea.
because I have adult children now, so I started doing it Christmas Eve,
Mhm.
or because that's when we celebrate our Christmas. And I decorated it with a jar with Christmas decorations, and I'd give the kids pieces, paper and pen, and their significant others, and would say, write down what you want to happen in this next year. And at first they were like, oh God, she's crazy. And then the first year I brought it back out and they enjoyed it because it was like, oh my God, this came true. This came true. We got a grandchild. There was just all this stuff. So I started doing it as a family tradition, just in a
Yeah.
different way with my kids and my husband.
I love that. I love that it incorporates everybody in the fun, and they kind of thought it was corny the first time, which is, just so typically human. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then as the first year it went by and they were able to look back at everything that came true, that is really incredible. They don't think it's corny anymore, do they?
No. And you can even do it at Thanksgiving, what you're grateful for.
Yeah. What a
Yeah.
beautiful practice. I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I love it. And your son is doing well now. I know we kind of skipped to the spiritual stuff, but your son is doing well now with the fully recovered now. Yes.
Well, he lives in a recovered state. Yeah, addiction unfortunately is not it's a brain disorder. It's never cured. It's treatable. And so he works a recovery program. And yes, he found his recovery on Mother's Day in 2008, and which could have been a really bad day for the rest of my life for Mother's Day because he did attempt a suicide the night before. And he woke up the next morning and thought, I think this is a sign. I need help. And he went to treatment that day. So,
Wow.
it was such a blessing. Otherwise, I would have found him in a note, which could have just been so devastating. Um, yeah, so he is just celebrated 17 years in May of his sobriety. and he's very successful in life and has a family, has three little boys that are adorable and funny. Yeah, he built a business with his brother, who I never thought that they would have a relationship, because the siblings get really angry when they're lied to, stolen from, and all that stuff goes on, and the dynamics of being in the family. And they found their way back on their own. I had to get out of the way, which is
Right.
really important, because my youngest wanted nothing to do with his older brother. And I used to try to push that relationship so we could be together as a family. But then I had to really take a step back and respect my younger son, and just say, okay, I get it. It does make me happy. I wish you'd be here, but I respect your decision. And because I got out of the way and let them figure it out, now they're best friends.
Yeah.
They're it's amazing what they built this business together, and they talk every day, they see each other every day, and it's it's heartwarming to know that all this damage that was done, and it's like the cracked bowl, right? You
Hmm.
take all those pieces and you just start gluing it back together. And that's what they did. They glued their relationship back together, and stronger and more loving than it ever was.
That's
Which is nice.
amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. It's so difficult when you have a fractured relationship with anyone, but when it's family, it just seems to have a even deeper impact, I feel like. So I'm so happy that they were able to repair that and that your son is, both of them are doing well and happy and healthy and successful in life. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. And that you were able to find your spiritual way through the process of what you were going through with your child when he was going through his dark night of the soul, and get yourself to a place where you were able to manage things, and not only manage them, but begin to thrive in that situation as well. So that is just absolutely incredible. What would you say to a parent or a family member or even a friend of someone who's going through addiction issues right now, as far as what kind of support you can lend to that person and how they can cope with it and maybe find their own spiritual way? I know that was a lot. That was a lot of asks right there in that, but tell us about that.
Well, I think first of all, it's to take a step back. We, as parents, I ran family support groups in the state of New Hampshire for over 12 years, and now I work nationally with parents and other family members, but mostly parents. And we get caught up in the outcome.
Mhm.
We get caught up in the fear of losing them to their addiction, and then we become desperate, and it's really handing our kids over. I had to come to a place that, because I was making a mess out of everything, trying to rescue and save him from his addiction. And so what I would tell them is, be very mindful, because when we provide unhealthy helping, which some people would say, well, you're enabling their addiction and you're doing this and you're doing that. And that's all in the name of love. We do it because we love them. So I call it unhealthy helping. That's doing for them what they could and should do for themselves. And it's taking a step back and learning to trust that there's a pathway for them and they're being guided. They could end up coming out of their addiction being a much healthier, happier person. They may never come out of their addiction. And it's figuring out a way. How do you stay in their lives or be a part of their lives without providing unhealthy helping? And managing to be with somebody who's sick and suffering and not let it affect you. I
Right.
call that detaching with love. And doesn't mean you stop seeing them. It means you figure out a way so that you can be together. I'll give you an example. I had a mom who her it was a second marriage. Her son was not allowed in the house because he had stolen from them. And the mother was beside herself. Her son was homeless. And she said, I don't know what to do. I want to make sure he eats. And he's, adult male. He was in his 20s. So I said, well, did your husband say he couldn't come on the property or he just couldn't come in the house? And he couldn't come in the house. It's great. You have a picnic table, make a dinner, invite your son over, sit out there outside at the picnic table and tell him the boundary. You cannot go in my house. Just don't ask. You can't go in my house. And then when you're bringing out your meal and you're sitting there having a meal with your child, don't talk about their addiction because all they hear is blah, 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 blah. They tune us out. Talk about the good times. Talk about, remember when you were little and we did this and how we laughed? Talk about things that are going to make them laugh. And hopefully that starts to a shift of his mindset that maybe I want a little bit more of this happiness instead of living the way I'm living. So it all takes time. I think it's patience. I had to, realize that my son was a gift, right? He's not mine. He's
Right.
just a gift, and I'm the vehicle in which he came through. And so for me, I, had through meditation, I handed him over to a power greater than me. And because the beautiful boy that I had raised was gone. He was gone. And so when I was in meditation, I saw him in a casket, which takes your breath away.
I'm sure.
But I remember just putting my hands in and holding him, loving him. And then I handed him up and I saw God's hands come and they left. And it, it was depressing, but it was also freeing because I surrendered. And that's what our loved ones have to do with their addiction when they surrender. And my son surrendered, and I'm probably going a little off track here, but I'm going to go with
Go with it.
it. My son surrendered. I mean, he was in and out of treatment. It's one and done is not typical. Usually, 5 to 7 times is the average. And so the last time that he was in treatment, I had this book asking, no, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It
Yes.
was right, and it was all about insecurities and how you can just positive affirmations, how you can change your life. And I was trying to that was part of my spiritual journey, utilizing stuff like that, positive
Mhm.
affirmations. For some reason, he thinks that I bought that book for him, but it was mine, and he took it to treatment. And he started reading the positive affirmations, and he started writing some down. And
Mm.
when and he would, well, this one night, I don't know the conversation. I never asked because it's not my business. He did say to me that he looked himself in the mirror, the person who was using drugs and this person who was 2 weeks sober. And he makes me cry.
I feel it.
And he said, Mom, I felt a negative energy leave my body that night, and I knew I was going to
Wow.
be okay. And from that day forward, he put his mattress on the floor so he could when he so
Mm.
when he woke up, he could roll onto his knees and pray
Wow.
to a power greater than him. And his prayer would be, let me stay sober till midnight tonight, just for today. He
Wow.
couldn't think past that because it was too much, it was too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So what I would say to parents, loved ones, as long as your loved one is still walking on this earth, hold on to your hope because you never know when the miracle of recovery will happen. Yeah.
Right. That is amazing. That is a powerful story. Holy cow. I'm so grateful to you for sharing that.
Thanks.
That is
You're
that is
welcome.
incredible. What insight your son had too. I mean, like, and it just goes to show you that if you listen to your intuition with just that small amount of, well, I say small amount, that book was impactful. And I love that he just took it. You know what I mean? Like, thanks, mom, for buying me this book. I'm going to take it with me. And
Yeah.
and it was beautiful. It's exactly what he needed. And that encouraged him to be able to face himself in that way and have that incredible moment. That is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And he still meditates. We both do. I'm in and out. Sometimes I do it more than I
Sure.
other times I do Zentangle artwork. So that's a form of meditation for me that takes me just into this, other piece of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's finding something to keep us our hands busy and our minds busy because like I said, my head could be my hell. I created stories and then I would believe them and I made myself crazy and I had to learn to stop this, right? I had to learn to stop listening to you're a lousy mother and what if you did this different or the what ifs, the could haves, and the should haves.
Right.
And so through meditation and journaling and the Reiki, I learned to stop it, to keep it silent. Every once in a while, there's some chitter chatter. It's
Yeah.
not a good time.
I call that the human factor, Donna. It sneaks in there sometimes. It can be pretty challenging some days, that human factor, but if with mindfulness and we just remind ourselves, of all of the things that we've accomplished from when we first started to now, and then, we can do it and give ourselves those encouraging words because it's really important for us to talk good to ourselves.
Yeah.
I actually had that conversation with someone at work today, and it's so crazy. We're taught to be nice to other people. When we're growing up, be nice to your brother, be nice to your best friend, be nice, be nice, be nice. But how many times do we get told, be nice to yourself? Say nice things to yourself.
hmm
Be your
hmm
own best friend. We don't get taught that as we're growing up.
Well, I think it depends on how mature our parents are.
Right.
And if they stopped the cycle, if they
Mhm.
stepped out of it and because my mom's 96. So her generation was don't make waves.
Right.
I'm a baby boomer. Kids can be seen but not heard.
Yeah.
Right? So all that stuff piles up and you have this all these suitcases full of crap that you're lugging all the stuff the negative things that you think about yourself that people have said to you or hurtful, whatever. You pack it up and you carry it and you carry it and you carry it until one day it's like, I gotta unpack this. This is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But it takes time. The healing doesn't happen in a day.
Right.
I'm a work in progress. I've been working on myself for these past 19 years, doing the work off and on, finding different stuff, whether, meditation or um, breath work, just different stuff. It shows up. You kind of outgrow some things, and then something new and really cool shows up. And then you start working with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. There are so many different modalities, so many different things for us to, you know, give a go to see how it works for us. And we need different things at different times in our lives. You may need Reiki right now, or you may need a mediumship reading 6 months down the road, whatever you need. Journaling is very helpful for a lot of people. I love journaling. I do a journaling and a card reading for myself almost every morning. I say almost every morning because I miss a morning here or there because life is
Hmm.
life. Life is
Hmm.
lifing is what Lisa Nichols always says. And it,
Hmm.
it gets that way, but that's the beauty of it. There are so many different things for us to give a go to see what works best for us in that moment. So, and we get to explore all that, and it's really fun actually. Like you said, some of it's really cool.
Yeah, and if it doesn't resonate with you, then you move on.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to love to meditate. And it's interesting because, I had a lot of parents who were taking sleeping pills to go to sleep at night.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but let me teach you something new and see how it works for you. And quite a few of them got off the sleeping pills and started putting on headphones and listening to meditation to go to sleep. And they'd
Oh,
have the best sleeps, and they'd wake up feeling better without the chaos and the drama stirring up in their heads.
yeah. That's amazing. I have a lot going on in my life right now, and I haven't been sleeping well. I may try that.
Oh,
I
there's
may
some
do that
great
and
ones.
see. Yeah, because there are some really amazing guided meditations, and I don't have headphones, so I just have to leave it playing, beside me. But I may do that tonight and see how that works for me.
What I do, I try to tune into what's happening in my body or my mind if I'm just off center or depressed or feeling anxious or feeling sad, whatever it is. Then I go on YouTube and I put in deep sleep meditation for whatever is going on inside of me.
Mhm.
And then I'll go through different ones till one just makes sense. And I listen to that, lights out.
Nice. I'm going to do that tonight and see how it works because a solid night's sleep for, even 6 hours would be amazing. Holy moly,
Mm,
that would be amazing.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's healthy. It's
it
part of,
is.
no matter what we're going through, whether you have a child in active addiction or, whatever. I mean, we're all thrown curveballs, and we all have to figure out our own self-care. Because without that, we just fizzle. And then we're not emotionally well. And if we're not emotionally well, 9 times out of 10, we're not going to be physically well either.
That's very true. That is
Mhm.
so, so true. Mindset is everything. It really, truly is. Oh my gosh. I see examples of it every day, when
Mhm.
I mean, and I work on my own mindset. It's a mindful practice. That's what I tell people. It's not
Yeah.
something that's a one and done. It'd be so
Mm-mm.
nice if it was. We could get ourselves to that place and not have to go back and address anything ever again, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's
Unless
it's a
you're Eckhart
mindful
Tolle.
practice. Pardon me.
I said, unless you're Eckhart Tolle, who has no feelings, like he's just zenned out and nothing affects him.
I can't even imagine. I have to wonder about that. I don't think it's humanly possible to be that zenned out. Hmm.
Yeah, I know. My husband's pretty zen.
Yeah.
He tunes a lot out.
Yeah. We could go into that topic pretty deep, but we're not going to right now. I think that would be for another podcast.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, gosh, I love the ideas that you shared about the Kleenex box for the letting go and the Kleenex box for the bringing in. I just love these ideas that you shared today. They're so beautiful. I feel
Thank
like
you.
we're I feel like I need to ask you something else, and I'm not sure what it is right now. That's so strange. I don't usually get to that place in
Huh. Hmm.
a podcast. So I actually have a friend whose daughter is in active addiction right now. And you suggested a program, and I think you said Teen Challenge. Yes, that was the name of the program. And
Hmm.
I did tell her about that because the program her daughter's in right now is only a 30-day program. And I feel like that's really short. So I don't know that much about this particular area of life because I've never had to personally deal with it either myself or with one of my um, children's. And I'm very grateful for that. However, it does leave me in a place where I don't know how accurate my feeling is about a 30-day program being a very short and maybe too short program. So, could you talk a little bit about the length of time that someone may need to get to a place where they're going to be, I don't know the right words to use here, okay, when they come out of the program, where they'll be more stable? Is that a good word?
Mhm. Well, 28 days is all insurance will pay for. That's why it's 28 days.
Ah, I see.
That's it. And so now, so when my son back, in 2008, he went into, and they did it different back then. So he went into treatment. And then after the 28 days, they had an extension where he could still be on property, still have the care from the different counselors, and he had a little bit more freedom. He could leave the property and go do stuff, but he ended up staying for, I think it was 90 days. Yeah, it was almost like 3 months, and that was a huge difference for him. So
Mhm.
now what it is, you go to treatment, and then there's recovery houses. They're not cheap, and you have to be very careful because there's a lot of people who do it. This is a multi-billion dollar business, treatment, and they're
Mm.
taking advantage of the parents and our children. And you have to be careful because some of these facilities broker our children. And what that means is they if they're getting near the end of insurance running out, they'll offer to pay them money to go back out. They'll give them money to go get high. They'll
No
have a
way.
reoccurrence. They'll have a reoccurrence, and then they bring them back in if they can get them back in. Yeah, yeah.
That is unreal. I can't even, that gives me chills. That
It's
gives me absolute,
disgusting.
I can't even imagine doing that.
You have to be very careful. You want to really check these places out because there's also trafficking that goes on.
Oh my God.
Mm.
It's not
There's a lot of
enough that
people
your
in the
child
world.
is going through addiction and then you have to be concerned about that kind of stuff. That is absolutely, I had no idea that even existed. That is crazy to me.
Well, I didn't either. And I've been in doing this long enough, and I've had a couple of the girls, the parents that came to my meetings. This is what was happening with their daughters, more prevalent with girls. Um, but yeah, so you have to be very mindful. These places look beautiful, and they're not always beautiful. And I'll tell you a funny story. So when my son was using, I had called this place in Florida because they did saunas, they did Reiki, they did all this beautiful stuff. So I called and they were going to take him because he hadn't agreed, but I'm making arrangements because that's the way I did it. And and so then I'm calling the airlines to make a reservation to get him on a flight. And I hear, what was it? Knocking on hotline or something like that. And I was like, excuse me? He goes, knocking on, I think it's knocking on. And Narcotics Anonymous hotline. That's what I ended up with. And this woman's on the other line. I said, this is really bizarre. I said, I'm sending my son to treatment in Florida, and I was calling the airlines and I got you. And she said, well, let me ask you, how much is it? And she goes, like 30 grand a month. And I said, yeah. And this is back in early 2000s. This was before he really found his recovery. And she said, "Don't do it. Do not do it." She goes, "Send him to a state one. Go keep him local because if he leaves that facility, You may never see him again. He could take off. You don't know where he is. At least if he's in your state, you have enough feelers around. But a lot of people think send him off, send him here, send him there, and then they'll say they don't want to come back because it's too painful or whatever. Yeah, you have to suck it up at some point. We have to face our demons and
Right.
move forward. So, the point is to be really careful where you send them, really check it out. Also, recovery houses in New Hampshire, we have a it's through the state. There's an organization that they have to get certified through the state to be able to be on this list. Does it mean they're great? No, it doesn't. Again, check it out because there's been many that charge like $200 to drug test your kids. They're charging the parents insurance when actually you can buy a drug test for like $40, right?
Wow.
So you just really want to be very mindful of where you send them. There's some great places, and then there's some really lousy places. So just be
So for
careful.
so how would they go about doing research to find out about the facilities that they're thinking of?
I'd show up, I'd call, I'd show up unexpected, yeah, and see how you're treated. The first time I took my son to detox, um, it was in this building, and all the windows and the doors were black. Like I knew nothing. And one of the doctors said, "This send him here." And I thought we could go in and meet the staff. This guy opens the door, puts his leg up. It tells my son to jump over his leg, and he says, "Say goodbye to your parents." I said, "No, no, no. We want to come in and meet everybody." He goes, "Say goodbye." And he shut the door.
Holy cow.
And I would call and I'd ask for my son. We don't know if we have anybody by that name because I didn't know he needed to sign a release. He started to go to treatment at, he was what, 21, 22 years old, and he's an adult.
Yeah.
So, finally, and I used a bargaining tool because he didn't want to sign it. It was like, if you want to come back here to live, this is an agreement you need to make that if I call, they'll tell me what's going on. I need to know. This irritates me because it's our insurance that's paying for this. We're paying our insurance bills to send our kids, and yet they won't talk to us. And if we're not part of the solution, then we become part of the problem.
Right.
I was part of the problem because I wasn't educated. So every time my son came home from treatment, I'd throw in his face, "You owe us thousands, blah, blah, blah," whatever. I would remind him of everything I shouldn't have done. We need to work our own recovery program from being the unhealthy helper, from being codependent, all in the name of love. I'm not saying it's bad. We all do it because we love them so much. But it's important that we all get healthy together. And that's what the work I do. I teach families how to get healthy together.
That's a beautiful thing. And do you also incorporate the spiritual aspect of things into what you're doing, or do you keep it to the kind of clinical side?
I don't do clinical. No, no. Um, I'll introduce it if I feel they're open to it. One of the things I do too is I do AccuDetox because that's another thing for loved ones when they're newly in recovery is AccuDetox. It's acupuncture and it's using seeds or the needles, whatever, and it helps with cravings. I utilize it for parents. I do it with seeds and beads, and I do different parts of their ears because they're so worked up. Just zen out so you can take a nap, right?
Yeah.
So I do stuff like that, but it depends on how open the person I'm talking to is to any of it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do like journaling, and it's not just writing. I incorporate artwork into it, or cutting out pictures that resonate with you and putting that in there, and then you write around it. And I just do different things. And I also help them connect to their inner child too, because no matter how old we are, that little kid shows up and acts out. And if we're acting out with our children and the child in us is showing up, that's not usually, doesn't usually go well.
Right, right. Not a really healthy dynamic right there.
No. So, it's teaching the parents to be how to handle things in a mature, loving way without ridiculing and put downs. And, I teach them the difference between a functional and a dysfunctional family. What does that look like? A dysfunctional family, they're going to name call, they're going to put you down. A healthy family is going to let you have a conversation about your feelings. And then, the dynamic, you talk about it and figure out a solution. So it's
Right.
a win-win. And how do you all live there together? The other thing I do is if they have their teen or adult child kind of move back into the home, we talk about a living agreement. How's this going to work? And the child, whether it's a teen or adult child, has a say in the rules and regulations, and the parents do. But the parents incorporate three consequences. And and so if it's a teen, you might, and they come home and you drug test them randomly. Usually they go ballistic, so you don't have to even do the drug test because they can't pass it. That's how it was with my son. I just show it and go, "You're a rotten mother, and you're this and you're that," and then like 8 hours later, he goes, "Oh, by the way, I did the urine test." Well, come to find out, he was saving his urine.
Gotcha.
And they can buy it online. They can buy clean urine online and all kinds of stuff. So, we talked about drug testing, random drug testing. And if it comes out positive for drugs, what's the consequence? So the first consequence might be I'm going to take your door off your room so you lose some privacy, or you go to treatment. Let them decide.
Yeah.
And if they're going to say take my door off, they're not going to go to treatment 9 times out of 10. And then you do. If it happens again, you put the door on. Well, now you get to sleep in the living room, and you lose um, all your privacy, or go to treatment. And if they don't, they go for the living room, and it happens again, then I can bring you to a shelter or go to treatment, because you can't be here anymore. This isn't a healthy environment for you or us. And so we need to figure that out. And what does that look like? So,
Yeah.
we have these conversations, and how can you live in the same household together? No name calling, and you hopefully the parents are mature enough to not do those things. If they aren't, then we have a conversation about that. It's all about awareness.
Right. And so how would you advise the parent of the addict if the addict also has a child of their own?
First of all, I don't use that language, and I'll tell you why. Is because labels are for jars, they're not for our beautiful children.
I agree. I agree.
And so, when someone called my son that, it would hurt my heart.
Yeah.
And because that's not who he is. He
Right.
has a name, right? He has a soul, and he has a brain disorder. His brain is wired differently than mine. I don't have a substance use disorder. So, um, and I forget the rest of what you asked me. Sorry. I'm a real kinder language gal.
Right, right. I didn't know how to say it in any other way.
Person with
But
a substance use disorder.
okay, if the person with the substance use disorder has their own child,
Mm. What was the rest of the question?
how would you advise the substance user's parent in dealing because
They
yeah,
often have to step in, and often they have to go to court. It depends on how bad the addiction is. And so I have a free family sharing without shame support group on Facebook. It's a secret group. And I have a lot of parents. That was the situation. There was a grandchild and, these babies, you know, and a lot of them got custody
Yeah.
of them. It- that baby's first and foremost. That child is first and foremost. And
Yeah.
because it's not fair to them, they don't understand what's going on, and they'll end up being the adult and taking care of the parent as they get older, and they're put in really lousy situations and dangerous situations. You know, I they need to call me and have a conversation with me, and we'll help them figure out a solution. Because what's right for my friend Paula might not be right for my friend Sarah with their
Right.
child. We have to talk about the situation. What does it look like? And sometimes we have to do baby steps. Figure it out. It's really, you have to be very careful how you navigate it because they'll take that child away and they'll go.
Yeah.
So that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I know there's a whole lot more involved when there's a minor child in the mix. So it does make it more complicated and more um, the need for mindfulness is greatly increased in that
Yeah.
situation for sure.
Yeah, and and there's recovery community centers throughout our country now that if someone doesn't want to go to treatment, you can send, try to get them to go there. I always, yeah, here's one of the problems. When someone's in active addiction, we don't ask them what they want. We tell them what they need. And that's not our job. I was playing God, like I'm gonna control all this because I thought that was the right thing to do. But what I learned is my control was my fear.
Right.
And I put my fear on my child, and that's not fair either. And so it's just learning how to navigate this. There's no right or wrong way. We all have to find our way because what worked for me may not work for you or your friend,
Mhm.
right? Um, and it's taking a breath and taking a step back and just kind of sitting with it. Sometimes we have to hold space for them. But one of the things that I learned when my son was in active addiction, my prayer used to be, I don't want him to be with drug dealers, and I don't want my son using drugs, and I don't want. The universe doesn't understand the word don't. So I kept getting more of what I wanted.
Right.
I had to turn my prayers into, I want my son to live a healthy, happy life.
Right.
And he does today. So be mindful that when you ask for what you want, don't talk about what you don't want because you're going to get more of it.
Right. That's very, very true. The language is really, really important.
Hmm.
And it's one of the areas that really requires an extra amount of mindfulness. I catch myself changing things as they come out of my mouth all the time because
Hmm.
it's, and I'm doing like so, I mean, like there's just some words that like hard. I feel like we overuse the word hard in our society. We make everything hard. Like choose your hard is like this big motto. It's like why does it have to be hard? Like we are the ones who are making it hard by overthinking it and
Mm.
making it into this huge thing that it really isn't, you know? So it does require a lot of mindfulness though, and
Hmm.
shifting little, I call them little micro shifts where we catch ourselves and we just shift in that moment.
Yeah, and eventually they stick, and then it gets better and better and better. It all takes time, and it's all baby steps.
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for this conversation. It is absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to change the view again here. And I'm so grateful for the ideas that you shared, for your personal stories that you shared. I mean, that one really got me. Like it really, really got me. It was so deep. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing that and so happy for your son that he had that moment. You know,
Mm.
like I'm getting teary about it again. But thank you for that. I would love for you
Mhm.
to share with us where people can find you if they would love to work with you.
My website is www.sharingwithoutshame.com, or they can email me at Donna, Donna, the number four, then the word support at Comcast.net.
Okay. And I'm going to drop all your links in the description box below the video. Do you have any final words of wisdom before we close out for today?
Just, hold on to your hope and remember to breathe. I remember when I was going through it, I would be holding my breath. So just remember to breathe and be kind, and self-help matters.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you
Self-care
so much.
matters.
That too. Definitely. Self-care
Yeah.
is a huge thing. So thank you for that. I
Thank
appreciate you so
you.
much.
This is
Thank you, everyone,
wonderful.
for joining us on this episode of Spiritually Speaking. I know that you will find this episode extremely helpful if you or anyone you know is involved in this type of situation. So please don't be shy. Reach out if you need Donna's help, and she's going to be there for you. Thank you all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I love you all. Have a beautiful day.